Hi, this is Joe Polish, and I'd like to welcome you to a very special Genius Network. I'm with a good friend of mine, Mr. Dean Jackson, who is filled with all kinds of knowledge, although he's going to act like he's not right now.
Filled to the rim.
Yes. How you doing?
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I didn't even tell you what it is we're going to talk about. I just said, Dean,
Yeah.
we're going to sit down. I'm going to interview you.
That's what happens. Whenever I'm in town, you just say, okay, we're doing something.
Exactly.
Here we
we
are.
are in the city.
San Francisco.
In the city. Exactly. Okay. Now, I want to talk a little bit about who this guy is. All right, Dean Jackson, I've known him for over a decade. He has done a tremendous amount of really cool stuff. He won't admit this, but a lot of internet marketers, a lot of world-class marketers credit him as the first internet marketer in doing something ethical and not in the sleaze business, meaning like weird adult sites and stuff, to have an actual opt-in page, what's now called a squeeze page. He also invented in the real estate industry, where he does a lot of training, the model of before, during, and after. What you do before a sale, what you do during a sale, and what to do after the sale. And he also is a guy that, although could get involved in an enormous amount of different projects, is really focused on lifestyle design and setting up a business to support, you know, what it is that he really wants to do in life. So I want to talk to you about a whole variety of stuff.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So one question: what's your definition of marketing, since you're known as one of the greatest marketers that is currently alive?
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
You mentioned this concept of before, during, and after. And
Right.
what I adapted that for the real estate industry specifically, but you know yourself, it applies to all businesses. So
Right.
marketing, in my view, is what the before unit is all about. It's about finding people who want to, in real estate, buy, sell, or borrow, or whatever your business is in the, in the business of finding, is finding people who want to do what it is that your business does,
Right.
and delivering them to your during unit. And your during unit is the actual unit of your business that does the transactional process. So if you're a real estate agent, it helps people actually buy a home, helps people through the transaction of getting the house closed, and then delivers them into your after unit, which is about nurturing lifetime relationships with all the people who now know you, like you, and trust you, so that when they raise their hand that they'd like to do another transaction or refer their friends, that's what your after unit is about. So for me, marketing is about delivering people to your transactional unit.
Gotcha. Well, you said three important words: know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when in your after unit especially, it's like the equity that you've built up over
Right.
all the years of doing a great job with all the people who know you, your reputation, all the people that you have helped get a result in your during unit.
Right.
When you move now into your after unit, that's equity that you've got. So we look at managing your, what I call your relationship portfolio, the people who do know you, like you, and trust you,
Right.
for a 20% annual yield, meaning that, if you think about what that means, if you thought about one person in your after unit, if you could get them to do one more transaction with you or refer one person to you over the next 5 years, that's a 20% annual yield, one time in 5 years.
Right.
Now, if you think about it, it almost seems ridiculous that you couldn't get somebody to refer somebody more than that.
Right.
But it's like if you had a stock portfolio, not all your stocks are going to get 20% across the board. Some of them are going to get a much higher return.
Right.
Some of them are going to maybe have a negative return.
Yeah.
Some of the people that you think know you, like you, and trust you might actually deter somebody from doing business with you.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then. Like, how did you learn all this stuff? I mean,
Observation, and I had the perfect laboratory. I mean, I grew up, I started in real estate as a real estate agent very young, but I studied marketing in college, and I really got just completely immersed in marketing and direct response advertising, and learning from a lot of the same people that you've learned from Dan Kennedy, from Jay Abraham, from Gary Halbert, and really applying all of this to my real estate practice. So observing all these things, seeing how it fits, and overlaying on that my own observations and my own inventions, if you want to call them that, about marketing. So that's where I got that before, during, and after unit from. It's just my own observation of it.
Okay, so you're in town actually this week, and
Yeah.
you're going to be speaking to approximately 600 real estate agents.
Right.
And the time we're actually doing this interview right now, this is an industry that is really struggling. I mean, the market is not on their side.
Right.
And in spite of that, you still have literally thousands of agents that are
Right.
using your methodologies and stuff that are having success in the worst possible conditions.
Yeah.
And if people can have success in the worst possible conditions with this quote-unquote knowledge, with these strategies, with these methods,
Right.
when things are great conditions, they just totally flourish.
Yeah.
So is there any sort of industry, any sort of categories that you would think of that what we're talking about here, which we'll go deep into, would not apply to?
You know, I can't imagine like a very localized, like a tourist business or something where you're only going to have people coming to your establishment one time.
Right.
Or something where somebody's only going to ever need you one time in their entire life. Then there's not that need to develop a relationship with people. But I can't think of any businesses, like any ongoing, you know, sustainable business that wouldn't benefit from having a group of people that know them, like them, and trust them, and building on that relationship. You know?
Well, and of course, I know the answer to
Yeah.
that, but I'm just asking you. You said the term direct response, using
Yeah.
direct response marketing. We're both direct response guys.
Right.
How would you define that?
Well, you know, I look at direct response as being something that is completely outwardly focused. And what I always make the distinction is between, you know, personal promotion advertising or institutional advertising versus direct response. And
Wait. Let's talk about, before we just skip over it, personal promotion advertising
Yeah.
or institutional. What is that?
well, I don't know if you've noticed, but real estate in particular is a very personal promotion oriented business.
Right.
You've got this notion that you've got to get your name out there. So you hear this, that people, you know, your name out there doesn't even really mean anything.
Right.
But one of the exercises that I do with the real estate agents is I really face them with a choice, you know, and the choice is, would you rather be rich or would you rather be famous?
Gotcha.
Because it's a lot less expensive to get rich than it is to get famous.
Is it really?
And, well, when you use direct response, that's what I talk about, you know, the difference between direct response and personal promotion. Direct response is about getting rich because you're putting your personal desires aside. It's not about you. It's outwardly focused and all about them, and you're acting as a magnet to attract all the people who could be your ideal customers, because all they care about is themselves.
Right.
So this week here in Phoenix, what I'll do is...
You said we're in San Francisco.
I'm
man.
sorry,
Come on.
yeah. Through the magic of Web-O-Vision. So what I'll do, we typically have 500 or 600 people in the audience, and I give somebody a choice right in the front row. I said, here's the thing. Let's imagine that this audience represents a 500 home subdivision. And I'm going to give you two choices. I'll let you come up here on stage. You give me 500 of your business cards. I'll hand one out to every person in this room. And you can stand up here for 3 minutes and tell everybody who you are, how long you've been in business, everything, all the reasons that they should choose you. And I'll help you get your name out there. So everybody in the room will know who you are. Or you can stay right where you are anonymously, and I'll have somebody from the back bring you an envelope, and in that envelope will be a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper will be the name, address, and telephone number of the 50 people in this room who are going to sell their home in the next 12 months. Which one would be more valuable to them?
Right.
And that's,
see the names.
yeah, crystal clear. When you say it like that, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, it makes total sense that it'd be better for you to know who they are than it is for everybody to know who you are. So, you know, that's why it's a lot less expensive to not have to shout louder than everybody. You know, often when you're doing direct response, you don't have to shout. You don't have to shout above the din because you're completely focused on them. It's like this one little, you know, you can whisper almost because
Right.
you've got the momentum that your audience is self-absorbed. They're obsessed with what they're obsessed about,
Right.
and they're looking for information. So every little thing, they're hyper aware of everything. So it doesn't take as much for them to actually see and respond to your advertising.
Well, that's great. You actually covered some awesome things. I mean, why do you think so many people, so many industries, real estate, auto sales, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals, they actually believe that selling is yelling. The more you can, shout out a message,
Right.
put a real pretty picture, put
Right.
a logo out there, that somehow is gonna be the best way to actually present what it is they're selling. I mean, why do you think that belief exists and is perpetuated in most marketing and business schools, in most marketing books that are in bookstores, in advertising agencies? I mean, it's so much easier to actually sell an individual, run an ad online, offline,
Right.
whatever, with your logo, with your image, with whatever that is kind of ego-based than it is to get them to just talk about what people are genuinely interested in, which is themselves.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, is that's why it's so easy. You just said it yourself, that the reason that it's so easy to convince business owners to run personal promotion advertising with their logo is because that's all they're focused on is themselves. That they're focused on themselves, so this advertising is all about them. It's fantastic for them. But, when you look at it, it's like being the one thing that most business owners are reluctant to do is leave anybody out. They want to have an ad that appeals to every possible person in every possible geography that
Right.
they could actually help. They don't want to leave anybody out or narrow their focus. So the way I describe it sometimes is saying, if you were hungry and you go to the grocery store and you're looking for chocolate cake.
Something I do every day.
Exactly.
No, I
So
don't do
you
it every
walk
day,
in every other day.
Yeah.
So you walk in the grocery store and every aisle is labeled food.
Right.
It's accurate, but it's not very helpful, is it?
Exactly.
So what if you're looking for chocolate cake and among all these aisles labeled food, you see one way over in the corner clearly marked chocolate cake?
Right.
Where are you going to head?
To the chocolate
Right
cake
to the
aisle.
chocolate cake aisle. It's a shortcut because that's what you've got on your mind. You're blind to everything else.
Right.
But all of your competitors are saying food because they don't want to leave anybody out, because they also sell apple pie and they also sell ice cream and they also sell cookies, so they don't want to leave anybody out by being that narrow and specific. But the very best thing you can do is pick one target audience at a time and be specifically outwardly focused on what that person would want and give it to them.
Yeah. Well, here's one of the things that, aside from that we both subscribe to much of the same marketing philosophies, is we both started out in the same situation. I mean, I learned marketing never thinking I would ever do interviews on it or teach seminars or produce programs. I was like starving.
Right.
In my case, running a carpet and upholstery cleaning business, selling a service in an industry I kind of stumbled into. I mean, nobody typically, when they're 5 years old, says, I'm going to wake up and run a carpet cleaning company. I mean, it's like one of those accidental industries. And I found myself in this business doing good technical work,
Right.
but having really no clue on how to effectively market myself. And so I learned direct response because all of the other stuff that I was trying simply didn't work. So I needed to eat. I needed to survive. And you did the same thing in real estate,
Yeah.
where, it's not like, oh, we just came across direct response and let's use it. It's like, wow, this is, we had to actually succeed. And you, for whatever reasons, took a total liking to this and developed a whole business model around
Right.
it, which has now trained literally tens of thousands of people in the real estate industry. And I've done the same thing in the cleaning industry. And what I want to say for our audience is people have a real hard time thinking their business is different, their clients are different, this applies there, but it doesn't apply here. And that's one of the biggest barriers to success that people have with using effective marketing. And what I always say, I have a Nightingale Conant program, and it's
Yeah.
the #1 selling marketing program in Nightingale Conant on marketing. And the reason I think it is because, for one, it's very tactical, but another reason is because one of the things I say in the program is that if you have anything even as equal to or remotely more exciting than carpet cleaning services, you could probably use these techniques. Because, you know, if you think about it, they're selling something nobody wants.
Yeah.
It's like an oil change, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody like wakes up and says, oh, I can't wait for my, you know, to reach X number of miles in my vehicle so I can go get an oil change. You don't like doing it, but you kind of got to.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing fun about hiring a pest control company and waiting around your house for them to show up. So it's that sort of stuff. So the reason I bring this up is I'd like to get your opinion on some of the obstacles, the barriers that our audience may have to using what you and I know is the most effective way to sell anything. Not like one of the most effective ways, the most effective way. I mean, we've both consumed thousands of books, have been to numerous seminars, have personally spent probably collectively millions of dollars on our marketing education. People say, well, you know, where'd you learn marketing? And I always steal this line. I don't know where I got it from, but it said, just like Abe Lincoln, I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm very much self-taught, as are you.
Yeah.
And if there was a better way to position and sell anything, I would actually teach that to people. I would share with them. So, you know, I have a very strong belief there is nothing better than direct response to sell what it is you sell.
Yeah.
And a lot of the competition out there is image advertising, people selling logos, people selling design stuff that, you know, that they actually kind of slam copy-intensive, you know, offline strategies or websites that aren't totally pretty but, you know, do more selling than ones where people can spend literally, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to set up. I mean, you've set up websites for a few $100s that have brought in millions of dollars.
Right, exactly.
And the uneducated, non-direct response person will look at that and say, there's no way that would ever work.
Right.
So anyways, I'm babbling here. I want to ask you, why do you think people believe this won't work for me or my clients are different?
Well, I think everybody thinks that their clients are more sophisticated than they actually are.
Are they really, though?
Not at all. I mean, I think that everybody thinks that they think of their clients as the collective. You know, they think of their clients as the forest. But the reality is their clients are the trees. And so by focusing on the individual trees, it's very easy to be completely outwardly focused on what they're looking for, you know, what they want. So, it's far less expensive, you know. I mean, the reason that most advertising agencies and designers and people who are in that personal promotion industry, you know, because they're not getting paid on results, they're getting paid on production and design.
Right.
So you know, the more that you do, the fancier it is, the more expensive it is, the better.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it's, you know, not about that. It's about the message being completely geared towards what your audience is really looking for.
Gotcha, gotcha. What is your definition of, like, building a brand? Because we hear brand building and we hear name recognition a lot. And one, you know, again, one thing that Dan Kennedy is the first person I've ever heard say this is, you know, if you think your name recognition is valuable, try to go down to the bank and deposit name recognition and see how much money they give you for it.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, what are your thoughts on branding?
Well, you know, I don't think there's any right answer for that. I mean, any answer that somebody would give you is philosophical, and it's their opinion on what it is. You know, I've heard different things of different, you know, coined ways of saying what branding is. But, you know, the reality is I don't put any real emphasis on branding. You know, I mean, I put emphasis on branding, if you want to call it that, in your after unit where you are, you know, building your relationship with somebody, where you're, you know, if you look at the book positioning, where everybody in every category has a ladder in their mind and somebody occupies the top rung. So as long as when somebody thinks of carpet cleaning, they think of you, or they think of real estate, they think of me, that's really what I look at branding. More like a rancher would have their, you know, their brand on their herd.
Right.
That's really the way I look at it, is that you're building that relationship with people, you know.
Gotcha. Well, in the cleaning industry, I actually am, if not the most well-known person, one of the most well-known, and I'm still trying to figure out a way to how to get dates out of that.
Right.
Any suggestions how to use that brand that I have?
That's funny. Yeah.
It actually kind of is.
There you go.
Okay, well, I want to ask you a little bit about leveraging marketing as a tool for lifestyle.
Okay.
And we're going to go back and forth. I mean, it may seem
Okay.
like I'm going on tangents here, but I do have a sort of a formula here in my mind of what I want to extract out of you, because you have a lot of wisdom and stuff. And what's the deal with this cap? I mean, I mean,
This cap.
you know, the first time I've interviewed someone
Yeah.
who's sitting down wearing a cap that's so into their image that they want to just hide themselves like this.
Yes, exactly.
I'm messing with you, okay.
Yeah, it's low self-esteem.
You have one of the most unique ways of looking at life, and you're a guy that I've always admired for simplicity. I mean, you make things pretty darn easy in a world where there's a lot of things that can derail you. Your attention, your interest, and what I most admire about you is you're not one of these people that is seduced by opportunities. You're a very sharp marketer. You've made millions of dollars. There's all kinds of things you can get yourself wrapped up in.
Right.
But you pretty much stick to your knitting.
Yeah.
I mean, you not only teach narrow your focus,
Yes.
but you actually live narrow your focus in your own life. You don't try to chase, you know, the whole saying, you try to chase two rabbits, you don't catch either one.
Right.
Whereas me, I'm like a type A,
Yeah.
you know, high strung, love lots of opportunities, bright, shiny objects, get involved in a lot of things. Whereas you know, you get people always trying to do joint ventures with you, and you're like, nah, that's really not what I do. This is what I do, and this is what I like doing. And you play golf a lot, that sort of stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about how our audience can actually maybe learn some things from you about success, about how to spend their time, about how to leverage themselves. And the reason that I want to talk about marketing and that is I believe marketing is the vehicle that has allowed you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know
Well,
if
it's the ultimate leverage is really what it is. I mean, you know, it goes right back to when I first started out in real estate. The first thing that I did was cold calling. I mean, I learned that's the way you do it. You know, I mean, I learned to call people and see if they wanted to sell their house. But I learned very quickly that that's a hamster wheel. Because I realized as soon as I wasn't doing the cold calling, my before unit was really shut down. I wasn't calling it my before unit then, of course, but when I'm not prospecting physically, then there was no leads coming in. So I had to go back and do it again. And, you know, I think I was blessed very early in life with propensity to be very lazy. And I say that, you know, in the best possible sense, that I always look for ways to make things as simple as possible.
well, you are
really
you're a very lazy person. I
Yeah,
have to,
absolutely. But I take that as a positive thing. I look at that as a compliment. Thank you.
Well, I'm trying to
And,
actually insult you.
I know.
You are taking it as
Yeah.
no, but you're very intelligently lazy because there's, you know, there's a lot of confusion between activity and accomplishment.
Well, that's exactly it. So I look at it that, you know, really it's about how can I leverage my brain, leverage my marketing knowledge to do something that I don't have to do now, you know? And the truth is when you apply marketing and when you start really, you get a system, it self-perpetuates. I mean, you can do something again and again and again, especially in an industry like real estate or an industry like carpet cleaning where there's a constant moving parade of new people who have the same universal need. I mean, the needs that people had 20 years ago with regards to carpet cleaning are the same needs that they have now. Now we've got different approaches for and different reasons why people might choose to have their carpets cleaned, if it's from a health standpoint or from, you know, they got a stain on their carpet. But, you know, same thing with real estate. People are going to buy their first home. They're going to move up to a bigger home. They're going to buy investment properties. They're going to buy vacations homes. They're going to move down to a smaller property. And that is a universal. It's always happening. So if I can crack the code on how to get people who are going to buy their first home, what are they most interested in? How can we set up a system that would, you know, have them call me? Once you're done with that, the implementation of it is actually boring. You know, if you want to think about that, it's like a really stable business is kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so I've always focused on it's okay to have a boring business and an exciting life.
Yeah.
Rather than have an exciting business where you never know what's going to happen, you never know what's coming next, but have a boring life where people are totally consumed with their business, but yet they don't can't remember the last time they went out golfing or had a weekend without being attached to their cell phone, or, had a nice night with their spouse. They're constantly worried and addicted to the adrenaline of their business, creating crises for them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the attributes of an entrepreneur is that urgency and that jumping into things, but not kept in check, not managed, not really thought through.
Right.
It just becomes workaholism. It becomes being in a million different things, and you've really figured that out. So, and we're going to come back to some marketing stuff. Some marketing things I want to ask you about, but I want to ask you a little bit about your definition of success. I mean, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And you created this list that you shared with me a few years ago. And I actually did a separate interview just on this particular subject, but I think it is worth mentioning because I think it's so profound and so powerful. I don't think you even look at it as maybe as profound, as important as I actually do for the audience. But nonetheless, you created this list of 10 traits called I Know I'm Being Successful When, and it became a criteria. So could you maybe explain what that is? And I'd like the audience to be able to take away this concept and apply it in their own business and their own lives.
Yeah. So where that came from was this observation that I had that there's always more. There's always another level. There's when you reach a level of success, you always sort of, you think about it yourself. When you first start out, you just get out of school and you're, in your early 20s and you're thinking, man, if I could just make $100,000, that I can't imagine how I'd spend that all. That's a lot of money. And you get to $100,000 and then you start thinking, man, I wonder what it would be like if I could make 500,000. Then I'd really be living, and then you get to 500,000 and you're like, wow, $1 million. Can you imagine $1 million a year? And then you get to $1 million a year and you see all around you, because as you're going, I think your reference group changes too.
Absolutely.
You start seeing people that have all kind of come up together, or, you start hanging around other people that, make $1 million, but then you're hanging around people that are making $3 or $4 million. And it's, it's never ending. And so what I really started to look at that point was to say, well, let's kind of push the accelerator pedal here and just go up ahead and see, like, how am I going to know when I get there? How am I going to define success? Because it's so easy to define success by all the other people around you and the next level, and not really appreciate what it is that you have right now, and knowing that being future-oriented like that is always going to, be a future-oriented thing. You're going to get up, but as Dan Sullivan says, the horizon changes. You never reach the horizon, because when you get closer, now you've got a different vista. It's still out there.
Exactly.
So having, for me, my own definition of success, so it's a self-referential thing. So I look at it and say, well, so what is it aside from an amount of money, or aside from an accumulation of things? What are the feelings or the being of being successful? How would I define those? How would I use those as a reference point for evaluating anything that I want to get involved in? So I went through and I started looking at, well, what are the things that what would make up an ideal lifestyle for me? Because ultimately that's really how I define success would be like the lifestyle and the way that you enjoy each day, So I look at, so in the present sense, how would I describe being successful? So that's why it's, I know I'm being successful when. It's not I know I will be successful when. It's I know I'm being successful when.
So it's never like a place where you arrived or where you're there. It's being that way when certain things exist.
Right. So I look at it. So for me, some of those things on my list, and I've worked with you on putting together your list, but for me, some of those things were, I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and say, what would I like to do today? That, to me, is, the good encapsulation of being completely free of time constraints. It's not, I don't have, a calendar that's booked with appointments every, hour, or my calendar is full all the time. I mean, it's like I wake up whenever I want, and whatever I'm always working on things. I'm always working on projects, but I'm always doing things that I'm doing them in the moment, you know?
Right.
So another one for me would be, I know I'm being successful when I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my very best work. So you're still allowing to push yourself and stretch yourself and develop new capabilities and, do things that are, equal to the ability that you have or a little bit beyond the ability that you have, so you continue to grow.
Right.
But I'm not obsessive about it. I'm not getting out of my league. I'm not getting into things that are going to create lots of these headaches for me. And, it's just been, for me, having my list of I know I'm being successful has really helped me to have almost like a map to look at, or a checklist to look at.
It's kind of like a compass for you, right?
A compass, that's a great word. So I know whenever I get faced with an opportunity, is it going to get me closer or further away from my definition of success?
What I like about it is it's a standard. It's kind of it's something where you can gauge, are you on or are you off? And I mean, I use ELF marketing. I mean, one of the things that I teach my clients is develop an ELF business, easy, lucrative, and fun, versus a half business, hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And it sounds corny for some people, like ELF business, easy, lucrative, and fun. There's, business ain't easy.
Yeah.
Well, it may not be easy to get to an ELF business, but once you start implementing ELF strategies, your business certainly becomes a lot easier, becomes a lot more fun, becomes a lot more lucrative, and it's real easy to look at an opportunity, a person, a project, or a whatever, and say, is this half? Is this hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating? Hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating? Or is it easy, lucrative, and fun? Does it allow me to use my best abilities? One thing I'd like to say then, I'd like you to rattle off a couple more of your I know I'm being successful when, is that you said this is self-focused, not outwardly focused. I'm not sure the exact word you used.
Yeah, self-referential. I mean, that's an internal frame of reference. I'm not judging my success by what kind of car you drive or where you live or how much money you make. I'm judging my success based on my own internal reference point for what success means.
Right, and here's why I think that is so important is I believe so many people, they read books, they go to seminars, they attach themselves to an expert, a guru, a whatever, and they attempt to adopt that person's 7 steps to success, the 14 rules of ultimate happiness, the 4 quadrants of whatever. And I'm not saying, I don't mean to slam anyone in particular. That 4 quadrants sounded like I was actually slamming Stephen Covey, which I'm not, because 7 Habits is actually a great book. Now the point is, though, is that people can take other people's quote-unquote expertise or advice and try to make it their own, when in a lot of ways that's like a kid that goes to medical school because his father really wanted him to, but he really wants to be a musician. And this person gets years of training in something that is not their ability, is not their interest, that is not their passion, and they end up leading these miserable, unfulfilling lives because they're trying to be successful for someone else's reason, not their own. And I think why it's such a valuable discussion to have with you about this is I know I'm being successful when, not I know I'm successful when I've hit this number of dollars in the bank, or when I've achieved this degree and this status symbol, or I've married, I mean, so many people's lives, it's nothing but image management, but they're not happy. And you are a guy that, from all my observation of years of knowing you, is just, a genuinely happy guy. And you do kind of what you want to do when you want to do it, and you don't answer to anyone, and you've set up conditions that allow you to have kind of a friction-free life. Better than, I mean, I can count 10 people in the world that I can think of that seem to kind of do what it is they want to do as well as you, which is one of the reasons I'm interviewing you on this. So what are some other things, and then we're going to move on to another.
Well, I mean, I just want to say too, and that the same thing goes there, that my definition of success is not necessarily going to be other people's. And I
Right.
said earlier that I don't judge my success by what kind of car you drive or where you live. And
Do you
that
think your
doesn't
car's
mean,
better than mine?
well,
Seriously.
I think it
Mine-
is.
I think my...
And that's what I'm saying, is that that doesn't mean I don't drive cool cars and live
Right.
in cool houses and have all this stuff. It's not about like not having stuff or not,
Right.
but it's, for me, it's the stuff is secondary to my lifestyle.
Yeah.
I made the decision early on to lead with lifestyle, lead with revenue, because one of the things is that my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs.
Yes.
That's my second definition of success. So when I know that, I would never be in a position that I'm driven by, I got to drive this cool car and I got to live in this cool house and I got to have another house and get myself into a situation where I have to work the hamster wheel really hard to support this lifestyle.
Right.
I worked hard to develop the revenue machine first and then let my lifestyle lag behind that. And it's just such a more peaceful way. So
Yeah.
you wanted to hear a couple more of my,
Yeah, just
know
because
I'm
I
being
think they're kind. I
successful.
think they're
Okay.
kind of cool. For
So-
this reason, though.
yeah.
For this reason, for our audience, is that I don't want anyone to say, "Yeah, that's my definition of success." I just want want someone to observe and hear how you actually came up with what ended up becoming the way that you run your business
Yeah.
and run your life.
And they're just kind of benchmarks and reminders of what's important about my life. So time freedom is a big thing for me. So that's my top one, that I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? Then my second one is that my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. Then I can live anywhere in the world I choose. And because I wanted to have a lifestyle where we split our time. So I spend the winters in Florida, I spend the summers in Toronto. And so that choice alone, that's an important choice to me. And that, means I am not likely to get involved in a local business that requires me to be in Florida or in Winter Haven at one particular time, or to be in Toronto all the time.
Right.
So that was an important thing for me. I mentioned that I'm working on projects that I'm excited about and allow me to do my very best work. That's a great state to be in. Wouldn't it be great if every day you wake up and decide what would you like to do today, and what you would like to do today is work on a project that excites you and allows you to do your very best work.
Yeah, and I love the way that you add and allows me to do my very best work, because say you're really excited about playing basketball, but you're really not good at it.
Right.
Then you could be really excited about it,
Yeah.
but you certainly can't do your best work.
Right.
So it's kind of like finding both.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And
What else?
my very best work is not time bound either. I mean, my very best work today is not going to be my very best work and capabilities 5 years from now, because I'm
Right.
constantly growing. I'm better now than I was 5 years ago,
Right.
because you know different things. You have different distinctions. So a couple of more, there are no whiny people in my
No
life.
whiny people.
Right. And so I look at that. I want to be hanging around people that are, that are cool to be around, and that I'm not beholden to anybody or in a situation where I have to take somebody's whininess,
Yeah, like
because
energy
because we
drainers
have a
that-
client relationship or whatever. And a lot of people get into that where they, because their lifestyle depends on them making a certain amount of money. They've got a client who has a lot of, revenue percentage in their business, and they're whiny, and they have to, continue on with that client because they mean such a big piece of their revenue.
Yeah, and people put up with an enormous amount of shit because of that belief.
Yeah. So I go on. I would
don't
say,
start using
so I
profanity
can
here,
wear.
okay?
Yeah,
No,
no,
it's-
exactly. So I can wear whatever I want at all times.
And
which
I've
to
noticed,
me,
by the way, that you can wear whatever you
yeah, but it's funny when I
like
say
that.
that,
I
because
like
I wear
that
the
cap.
same thing all the time. And
Well, no, here, this
Okay.
is funny. Let me stop you there
Yeah.
for a moment. We had this conversation last night. It
Right.
never occurred to me, and I've known you for the longest time,
Yeah.
that this is, you kind of always
well, I
wearing,
just started that maybe 3 years ago.
well, you're
Yeah.
always wearing black shirts
Yeah.
and like tan shorts
Right.
and baseball caps.
Yeah.
Not always baseball caps, but most of the time you have a
Yeah.
cap on.
Yeah.
And it's usually black.
Yeah.
And you were talking about Steve Jobs having his uniform, and
Right.
like
Well, somebody pointed that out to me afterwards because I've been wearing this uniform, and then I saw somebody sent me an article that was billionaires in their uniforms, and it was, I had never thought about it before, but
Right.
Steve Jobs always wears the same thing, the black mock neck and the jeans, and Larry Ellison wears the same thing all the time. Albert Einstein wore the same thing all the time, and I've just kind of adapted it as, something for me.
Right.
And
Okay,
yeah.
well, I think it's hysterical. So you were
Yeah.
telling me that you own how many of these shirts?
I probably have like 30 of these shirts. I've got about 10 pairs of these shorts and about 10 or 12 of these hats. And it's we're the same underwear, the same socks, and
Not
so I
the
mean,
same underwear, the same style.
no, but
right?
it's kind of freeing, I mean, nothing in my life really, depends on me wearing anything but this.
Well,
And,
first off, this has been
yeah.
bothering me because I thought about it last night. I thought about it today, and I was like, if you only had to not have to think in the morning about what to
Right,
wear
right.
in different colors and this and that, and
Yeah.
try certain things on, that would actually simplify your life. But
Mm-hmm.
there's another side of me. It's like I don't want to be wearing the same thing, walking around all the time. But I've really thought about God. It's an interesting concept, and it doesn't much
Yeah.
matter what your reasons are. The point
Right.
is, I think the end result is you want a friction-free life
Right.
without hurdles, without restrictions,
Right.
in anything that you can do that just makes life a little bit easier. Or a lot
Simplicity,
easier.
simplicity. I
Right.
mean, that's the thing. There's something about that. So, I wear my watch for curiosity only. That's one of my other success things. And that's something that, to me, that symbolizes that I'm not going to be in a thing where I have to be constantly aware of the clock to get to the next appointment, or I've got this conference call. For me, having one thing on my calendar that is a time commitment is a blight on that entire day. To me, it's like this speed bump in my day. And I don't know how. I mean, sometimes that's for me. That's just thing. I have some people. I have a friend who's a mortgage broker, and his ideal is to have appointments booked, on the hour, back to back to back. And for him, that's his definition of success, where he comes in and he's got all his appointments lined up. And,
Well, okay, so there could be people on there going, "Oh my God, I would. That's what I want," and a lot of times they could be trying to adapt your value system because you're kind of talking about it and it sounds kind of cool.
Right.
And they also are faced with the question of, well, how do you really know? I mean, what advice could you give for people out there that wanted to develop their own? I know I'm being successful when one of the ones that I came up with after spending, I should actually tell the story. I went to Toronto, and I was going to Strategic Coach, which is a program I'm in with Dan Sullivan, who's an awesome guy. And I decided to stay in Toronto for a few days, and I stayed at the home you have in Toronto. And I asked you and your wife, do you guys got an alarm clock? Because I was going to get up in the morning and try to go work out. And you looked at Sony, your wife, and you're like, do we have an alarm clock? And she's like this blank stare, like, I don't think so. And you look at me, you're like, we don't have an alarm clock. And I'm thinking you're screwing with
I know,
me
it's
here.
so
I'm like,
funny.
what
I mean,
sort
it
of
didn't even,
household,
it had never come up. I don't ever think like that. It's kind of funny.
And I'm like, and I said, I'm like, you don't have an alarm clock?
Right.
And you're like, no, we don't have any. I'm like, man, that's when it crystallized for me that you absolutely have set your life up to live that sort of way. Now, for me, that wouldn't be the total way that I do it, but at the same time, so we had some discussions about my I know I'm being successful win list, and one of the ones I wrote down, I wrote many, but the one that I wrote down that I really like is I live like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust fund.
Yeah.
Because we identified how much money do I really need to do the things I
Right.
want to do? Everything above that is gravy.
Right.
But, how much money does it really take?
Right.
And so I thought, the perfect thing would be to live like an artist, doing what I want to do, using
Right.
my creativity, using my abilities,
Yes.
and have money.
Yeah.
Because, artists without money, that's why they're called starving artists.
Right.
And a lot of people, they try to do what it is they want to do, but they haven't got the money part figured out.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the money part figured out, you don't really have freedom. And a lot of business owners, I think most business owners really get into business because of freedom. A lot don't think of it that way.
Absolutely.
But,
And
freedom
what's more free than being an artist? I mean, that kind of expression is, that's a life metaphor for me. That's the way why I've adopted that of being like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust fund.
Right.
When you look at it, if there's nothing that you can't really do with $50,000 a month. I mean, any lifestyle that you could imagine, really, you can have on that. And so, but it doesn't tie the economic gain of what you're doing to your to the immediate output. Like if you're an artist where you have to live on the art that you create, you kind of are forced to sometimes do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. But if you're not doing it for money, then you get to do really what you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, express yourself in your best way.
Right. Well, is there any other things about I Know I'm Being Successful Win that you'd like to say to kind of wrap up that?
Well, I would encourage people, it starts from a list of making, and identifying what are the things that are important to you about time, about geography, about stuff, about what you wear, about what you do with your time, about who you hang around with. Are there things that you can use to set standards for yourself, really? Yeah. And how can you describe those in a way that really anchors it for you?
Okay, well, give a little bit of history of your background of actually how you learned marketing, because I want to talk a little bit about marketing right now.
Sure. Okay. So, as I said, I started out as a real estate agent and started by cold calling, and then sort of evolved into making some money and then saying, I think I'm going to try some personal promotion advertising to get my name out there. So if I get my name out there, everybody will know who I am. So I started spending some money on personal promotion. I wasn't getting any calls, but every time I'm in the grocery store or the video store, everybody knew who I was. But it was, sort of very expensive. And so then I really came across the first direct response kind of introduction that I had. And so I started then applying direct response principles to my real estate business. The very first thing I did was I had these business reply postcards that I sent to apartment complexes offering a booklet on how to buy your first home. And it went out to about 2,000 apartments. And the first day after they went back, I went into my office, and our receptionist, Joanne, gave me this little stack of these business reply cards that had come in. There were 11 people that first day.
Wow.
And I remember calling those people. And to me, I still get that giddy feeling in my stomach, because that was the moment that I knew that I was never going to have to make another cold call again, because now I had cracked the code on how to get people to call me. And everybody that I called, I talked to 6 out of those 11 people that first night. And everybody that I talked to was friendly and cooperative. They knew who I was. They knew why I was calling. They remembered asking for the book the day before. And it was like I would have to go through, 3 days of cold calling to find that many people who were that sort of friendly and going to do something. And so from that moment on, I just kind of poured myself into creating and experimenting with different direct response advertising. And I started licensing what I had done in Georgetown to different agents all around the city, and that was so my, ability then to duplicate what I had done in Georgetown to license it out to other people.
Okay, well, what you just said is critical for our audience to actually get, which is positioning. You actually, instead of cold calling and going out and trying to find someone, Dan Kennedy calls it be a welcome guest instead of an annoying pest.
Right.
Seth Godin calls it permission marketing.
Right.
We call it lead generation,
Right.
Whatever. But what's really cool about it is I have a good friend named Richard Rossi, who's a good friend of yours, and he has this great line where he says all consumers, all human beings for that matter, are walking around the world with this question in their head: who can I trust? And when you're out there trying to sell something, through advertising, through cold calling, through whatever means you're trying to get a message out there, and you're trying to find people that are, one, interested in your stuff and want it, and getting them to desire it, the fear that exists is, can they trust you? Should they buy from you? Should they call you? Should they listen to you? And so all human beings have this, who can I trust? I mean, you're not going to go to a restaurant and eat if you think you're going to get sick there.
Right.
So there needs to be some level of trust. And what most people attempt to do without marketing is they do a lot of manual labor in order to go out and talk to people and hand out business cards and cold call. And the problem with that is even if you're really good at it, you're limited by the clock. There's only so many hours in the day. And so with positioning yourself, like what direct response marketing really is doing all of your selling in advance.
Right.
Because what you're doing is you're establishing rapport with people robotically. And you know, one of the ways that I try to define the difference between selling and marketing is I say selling is what you do when you are on the phone with somebody or in front of somebody face to face. Marketing is what you do to get someone on the phone or in front of you, properly positioned so that those people are pre-interested, pre-motivated, pre-qualified, and predisposed to do business with you. And what you said with these people is you were talking to them and they were expecting to hear from you. They wanted to hear from you. They asked you to give them information and hear about what it is that you can offer them versus you going out and saying, hey, I got something for you there.
And I'm going to correct you there, because what they didn't respond to have me tell them what I can do for them. They responded because I offered them information that they really wanted. I offered service. I wasn't talking about them. I wasn't talking about them buying a home through me. Or I wasn't talking about now's the best time to buy. Rates have never been lower. Prices are down. I never said any of that. What I offered them was a free book on the first-time buyer's guide to buying their first home.
Right.
And that gets you into a dialogue with somebody. Now, what your responsibility then is to know from the moment that they respond what the path that you want them to take is. So you're going to lead them to the next step. And most people, most businesses and entrepreneurs and salespeople are not prepared or good at offering people the next step, leading people to the next step. They do things like they take the front end of a direct response process, because that's just about the lead generation, where anybody, I know you do the consumer guides and the carpet cleaning guide, it's the same thing. That what you're doing is you are getting somebody to raise their hand, but now if you just send out the consumer guide, or you send out the report, or you send out whatever information you're offering, and you say to people, and this is what all salespeople do, or people who don't want to appear pushy, they say, if you've got any questions or is anything I can do to help you, feel free to give me a call. Now, that's the equivalent of me bringing you into my house, sitting you in the living room, and saying, hey, Joe, I'm really glad you're here. You know, if there's anything you want, if there's lots of food and drink in the fridge, go ahead and help yourself. If you want anything, it's perfectly fine. It's all there for you. I'll be in the other room. If you need anything, just give me a call. Now, what are the odds that somebody that I go through that with and sit them in my living room is going to go into my fridge and get something to eat or drink?
Well, if it was me, I would be.
I know you would. That's why I said most people.
Yeah, someone not as rude as myself.
Yeah, most people, it would be very difficult for them to go and take something, because we don't want to, as a society, we don't want to impose on somebody, right? We don't want to take, but then, salespeople or consultants or business owners, they don't want to get rejected. So they make it very passive like that. Like they want to respond to people. They want to be responsive, and they want to let you know that, hey, I'll be responsive. If you need anything or you've got any questions, just give me a call. I'm more than happy to help. Feel free.
Right.
Yeah. But what that's saying is that's a rejection-free technique, right? It's easy to do because now I'm not being rejected in that. And if you want my help, you're going to ask for it. And I'm more than happy to help. Even if so, I would really want you to feel comfortable enough to go get stuff from my fridge, but most people won't. Now, if I went into my kitchen, I sat you down in the living room, and I came out with a plate of freshly baked cookies, and I came out to the living room with the plate right in front of you and said, Joe, would you like a cookie? Would you take a cookie? It would be harder for you not to take the cookie than it would for you to take it, even if it wasn't your favorite kind of cookie.
Right.
Because I've
chocolate,
clearly
right?
gone out of my way for you. I've got the cookies right here. And so you would take the cookie because it's easier to do that. So it's the same kind of thing. What are the cookies that you can offer your clients? Instead of saying, if you've got any questions or if there's any way I can help you, feel free to give me a call. Why not anticipate what their next need is going to be and have an offer that makes it easier for them to take it, accept your offer than to not. So most people, they wouldn't want to call somebody up and say, hey, can you block off some time for me this weekend? I want to see some homes. That's what that's what real estate agents are expecting people to do, and they'd be more than happy to do it. But if I said to you, hey, Joe, you know what? Every Saturday this September, we're having 2-hour Saturday tours of homes, and they start at 10 o'clock, at 1:30, and 3 o'clock. So if any of those times would work for you, you feel happy to join us on one of these tours. Now that sounds like it's already going on. It sounds like you're going to just hop on the bus and we'll go on this Saturday tour of homes. But it could be a one-on-one tour. It could just say, it's easy. Oh yeah, I'd like to come on the 10 o'clock tour.
Right.
It's something that's already happening. So it's the equivalent, yes, I'd love a cookie, as opposed to nobody would ever say, you know what, now that you mention it, would you bake me some cookies? I mean, you never ask somebody to go out of their way for you, but it's so easy to accept offers. So it's about making those offers that make it easier for people to start the process.
What I think is so fascinating about this is it's almost counterintuitive to think that when people are trying to just be nice and be passive, they're actually more threatening that way.
Yes.
Because you're not making it specific. And when you offer a free report, I mean, you take my example, because I really want our audience to kind of get this, is that when I first learned direct response, one of the things that was most fascinating to me is that you could change a message on an ad, on a letter, on a postcard, on a business card, and dramatically increase the response.
Right.
And part of the message was not a one-step message where you actually hear name, rank, serial number. Here's how you can summarize most advertising. In a phone book, on yellow pages, on the internet, who they are, what they do, click here, call this number, whatever. And then I learned about secondary reasons for response. Give someone another reason to actually contact you to get a quote-unquote a goodie, something that would educate them. And so I paid a copywriter $1,800, which I thought was like a huge sum of money. This was like in the early 1990s, and I paid a copywriter $1,800 when I was just trying to figure this stuff out to write a consumer's guide to hiring a carpet cleaner.
Right.
And I sat down with this guy, and what I wanted to do was get in print all of the things that people didn't know that they didn't know about how to choose a carpet cleaner, because then I could make an offer. You mentioned the term offer, which is critical, on something other than price, because the worst offer is no offer at all. The second worst offer is totally using price. And then you've got all these business owners thinking all people care about is price. Well, yeah, if that's the only way you give them a way to make a buying decision, if the only criteria you use is price, you fish with price, you catch fish that bite on price. Right. You fish with free report, you fish with value presented in another way. And so I sat down and I had this conversation about all the things that I knew about how I delivered carpet cleaning services. And I mean, we're talking carpet cleaning. And by the way, before anyone loses it and say, how does this apply to me? We've got people in financial services, obviously real estate, graphic design, information marketers, book authors, pet stores, karate schools. I mean, this applies to all industries where you can help someone make an informed, intelligent decision on how to buy something or to find out more information. So I came up with this whole criteria of 8 mistakes to avoid when choosing a carpet cleaner, 7 questions to ask a carpet cleaner before you invite them into your home, how to avoid 4 carpet cleaning ripoffs, 6 Costly Misconceptions About Carpet Cleaning, Crawling Critters and Crud, A Guide to the Slime, Grime, and Livestock That's Seeping, Creeping, and Galloping Through Your Carpet, the difference between value and price, a whole little criteria. And on one page, I went from, using like a brochure and a flyer to this very educational booklet on how to choose a carpet cleaner. And instead of, running ads that would say, call and hire my carpet cleaning services, it was call and request a consumer's guide to carpet cleaning. I had business reply cards. I would give them to carpet retailers. They would put them on their counter. People could actually fill out their address, drop them in the mail, and I would send them the consumer guide. And this is before the internet. I mean, this is when there was
that
no
was
internet.
the thing, right?
Yeah, and then I took that consumer awareness guide and turned it into a 24-hour free recorded message, and I ended up getting a red rubber stamp, and I put it on the back of all my business cards, because now, I mean, heck, you can print out business cards out of an inkjet printer, but it wasn't that easy back then.
Right.
And so I got a red rubber stamp that said, warning, don't call any carpet cleaner till you listen to this 24-hour free recorded message. And then if I was ever in a situation where I was still kind of doing any face-to-face selling, instead of trying to do a commercial, I would just hand out a business card and say, by the way, there's a 24-hour free recorded message that'll teach you everything that you need to know on how to choose a professional carpet cleaner. Listen to it, and it'll tell you what you need to know. And all of a sudden, people started calling me, not asking me how much do you charge. They would call in and they'd say, when can I do the job? Because the free report built all the reports. So instead of you going right to the steps, you say the steps of, hey, buy a home for me. You're educating them. And by educating them robotically, you're building trust and rapport with them to answer that question, who can I trust? And who now is better positioned to actually give them advice? Because now you're no longer the salesperson, you're the advisor. You care about them. You've given them value without asking anything in return. And when you give someone value without asking anything in return, it puts you head and shoulders above everyone else. So there you go.
There you go.
Say something smart now. Now, well, let me. I want to talk about leverage, though, with marketing.
Okay.
I put this book to the side because, by the way, those of you that are our audience here are probably not aware of the fact that I'm actually doing this interview with Dean at my good buddy Dean Graziosi's set. And Dean is one of the top infomercial guys on the planet that actually does what it is he says he does on television, because a lot of people that are on infomercials that sell how to make money and stuff don't actually do what it is they, actually talk about and sell. Whereas Dean, I've known Dean for several years now, and this guy is awesome, and he owns millions of dollars worth of real estate. I've actually been to the small town in New York where he actually started it all. And this is his second New York Times best-selling book called Be a Real Estate Millionaire, Secret Strategies for Lifetime Wealth Today, and you need to go buy this book. But anyway, I was talking with Dean about a year and a half ago about the concept of using a free recorded message, and he is the first New York Times best-selling author to ever put a robotic educational message on the cover of a book. And so on the cover of his book here, it says on the back, warning, reading this amazing book will change your life. Call now to hear an important free recorded message from best-selling author Dean Graziosi. And so someone could be sitting in a bookstore with their mobile phone. They could actually call and listen to a free recorded message, and he gives them a little bit of information about what it is they'll learn when they read this book. And so before they've even cracked open the book, they have rapport. They've heard his voice. It's experiential. He's engaged in a dialogue in a lot of ways, and that is very cool. And most people don't get the concept of doing marketing in advance. If he wanted to capture an email and say, and by the way, I'll put you on my newsletter list, that sort of stuff. Now, the reason I bring this up is I look at direct response not only as the most effective way to sell something, because of how you're positioning yourself, the fact that you're giving people value. It's totally non-threatening. I mean, people don't have that fear of when they're on the phone or face-to-face and someone's going to ask them, hey, buy something. When you use a sales letter, when you use a free report, when you have an educational website with copy or video or audio, DVDs, whatever your deal is, you're educating people in advance. But what it does is it saves you an enormous amount of time. So I like to think of it as time management marketing.
Exactly.
So I'd like you to talk a little bit about marketing as a leverage tool. And then I'm going to ask you about an interesting newsletter you wrote several years ago about Siegfried and Roy and also the Blue Man Group, which I think is instructional. But let's talk about...
Well, I can answer that question by telling you that story.
Then
because
that seems to make
the
sense.
difference between leveraging direct response and the non-leverage of personal promotion is that when you're faced with those choices of building your business around you,
Right.
you are limited by you being the constraint in your business. You're the thing, you're the linchpin of it, and it
Right.
depends on you to be there. Direct response advertising allows you to replace you with a system. You know, once you figure out what it is that one segment of your market really wants, they can request the guide, they take you up on that next offer. It leads them right into the process of consuming what it is that you do. So, you know, a few years ago, this was about maybe 2001, sometime around there, I'd written a newsletter. I was flying from Toronto to LA, and I was reading in, it was either Fortune or Forbes magazine, I think it was Fortune or Forbes, where they have the top paid entertainers.
Right.
And so I was looking on the list, and I saw that Siegfried and Roy were on that list of the top entertainers, and they had just signed a new contract with Caesars or the Mirage or wherever they are, Mirage,
Yeah.
and they made $28 million a year, and they did 8 shows a week, 40 weeks a year was their contract.
Right.
So when you think about it, that is what they're going to be doing, 40 weeks a year, 8 shows a day. Then I started going
8
higher
shows a
up
day?
8 shows a week. Sorry,
Exactly.
2 shows a day, 40
Don't get all hurtful here on this.
Wow. Then I read higher up on the list with $69 million was the Blue Man Group. And then there was an article about the Blue Men, and so I started investigating it a little bit. And these guys, they have concurrent shows that run in different cities. There's 4 guys in each show. 3 of them actually perform or whatever with 1 backup. And the way that started was that these guys wanted to have a 3-man show. There were 4 of them, so that if somebody couldn't make it, they would still be able to put on the show. So they came up with this idea of painting their faces, and you know, anybody could, people wouldn't know the difference. So when you think about that, the brilliance of that is that they've replaced the need for it to be about them by creating this persona of the Blue Man. So when people go to Las Vegas and they go to see the Blue Man Group, it doesn't matter who the Blue Men are. They've gone to see this show where anybody who has the ability to learn the moves, to learn the show, could step in and perform. Now, when you go to Las Vegas to see Siegfried and Roy, you're expecting to see Siegfried and Roy.
Right.
You're not going to see 2 guys and a tiger.
Right.
Right. And so when you look at that, it was kind of spooky because I'd written that article in the summer, and literally less than 60 days later, Roy was mauled by a tiger.
Yeah, so and here's what's fascinating, is
Yeah.
you actually you wrote this before that happened.
Right. And literally, like, just, you know, months before it actually happened. And what happened, if you remember, is the whole show shut down. Something like 128 people lost their jobs. The whole thing is out of commission because one guy got mauled by a tiger, but he was a pivotal piece of the business. So the question I always ask people is, you know, what would happen to your business if you were mauled by a tiger? And that's the test of, are you building a business around you, or are you building a business around systems? And that's what direct response really is a way to leverage and develop a system that this is the ad we run, this is the guide that we send people when they call, this is the offer that we make, this is the presentation that we give when we sit down with people when they invite us into their home, this is the offer that we make. And anybody could do that. It's not dependent on Joe Polish is the best carpet cleaner in the valley.
Right.
Right.
See, here's the deal with that. I mean, you call it tiger-proofing your business.
Right.
And using direct response literally allows you to tiger-proof your business in so many ways, shapes, and forms. And if you do not have a system for selling what it is you're selling, you're at the mercy of the consumer system for buying, which is usually price, which is usually going to be manual labor intensive. And what is most amazing to me, I totally get this. I mean, when I first learned this, before I ever started selling knowledge products and training to other business owners, I wanted to build my carpet cleaning business to be very successful. And I was worried about running the ads with a request for a consumer awareness guide, running ads, driving people to call a free recorded message, because I actually thought my competitors would see this. They would knock it off before I had a really strong footing, that they would be able to use this method against me. And so I was kind of reluctant to kind of put it out there in the beginning. But I did, because I was like, you know, if you keep it hidden, you're never going to derive any benefits from it. It's like people that live their life with the fine china that they never take out, because they're waiting for that magical moment. And the point is, use it, man. Use every tool in your toolbox. Use it up. You know, it doesn't matter. Use the resources you have available. So I started using it, and in 6 months, I literally took this company that was struggling in 5 times the revenue in a 6-month period. I didn't know anything more about the technical side of the business. I wasn't any better of a manager. I didn't have any better computer system, a more elaborate anything. What I simply did was I had a more effective message that I conveyed to prospects and customers to get them to buy my stuff. And you know as well as I do, whenever we equipped our clients with this stuff, they simply can explode their business. They can get wealthy very quickly.
Absolutely.
And so the reason I'm ranting about this is a lot of people, they don't get just how darn valuable this is. I mean, there's a lot of areas in business where you can focus time and attention. You know, there's 3 things you can spend. You can spend time, you can spend money, you can spend energy. And a lot of people, it's easier for them in the carpet cleaning industry. A lot of the people that I would offer stuff to, it is psychologically easier for them to go out and spend $15,000 to $20,000 on like a truck mount than it is for them to spend $500 or $1,000 on marketing education. And it's easier for them to go and hire a part-time employee and pay them, you know, a couple grand a month or whatever, than it would be for them to spend, you know, $100 on a book on marketing. And what I want to say, and I'd like to get your suggestions, your insight on this, is that marketing, a marketing system, like a free recorded message, a free report that you can use over and over again, can deliver a compelling, powerful, convincing message to people robotically for literally like a free recorded message. You know, you could spend $20 a month, and it will, and people can listen to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It always delivers an articulate pitch.
While you're doing something else.
Exactly. Doesn't complain about a headache, always shows up on time. And what I love so much about marketing is it's, you know, it's automated, it's robotic, whereas human beings, if you rely on human beings to do the selling for you, human beings have personal problems. They wake up some days in a bad mood. Sometimes they're fighting with their spouse. Sometimes they're sick. Marketing, if you automate it, it always shows up, as long as you drive it. And so what could you say to people that are listening to us? If I could just reach out in every person who's listening to us right now, get them to just increase the significance that they place on direct response marketing and marketing tools by 10%, it would have a giant economic impact. It would reduce enormous amounts of stress and angst in their life. It would bring them better clients all the way around. It would help them develop an ELF business, and that's what I want people to take away from listening to us. What could you say to that?
Well, test. I mean, you know, it's very easy to get started. It's to pick one very specific customer, one very specific target market that you want to attract more of, and think about what would be the most interesting thing for them right now. What's on their mind that they're looking for, and either put together a free report or put together a recorded message and test that one little thing for one little audience. And I mean, I think once most people get an experience of having their first response with, especially if they're used to doing cold calling or doing, you know, active prospecting, once they get a taste of somebody calling them, they'll be hooked themselves. It'll build its own momentum. So you don't have to think about having all of these multi-step, multi-process campaigns going for across all different markets. You can expand to ultimately cover all of the markets that you want to cover, all of the target audiences, but start with one, get that done, and test it out.
Yeah, you know what? It is. It's like a good drug. Once you get the first
Right.
buzz, you're like, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" Because I got the same sort of feeling, and I think that's how someone gets kind of hooked on direct response. Is they finally see that, wow, not only does this work, but it works in ways that makes everything else infinitely easier than everything I was doing before that. I mean, one of my greatest discoveries in business that was profound to me, one of those defining things, was the discovery of direct response. And then the second discovery that was huge for me is learning the difference between a transaction and a relationship, knowing that there's more money to be made out there developing relationships and selling to people over and over again than there ever is doing a one-time shot sale, in building referrals, understanding lifetime value of a client, and applying direct response there was, you know, giant. Now, okay, last thing I want to talk with you about, at least
Okay.
category-wise, and I might throw in a couple of other things because, you know, I'm high ADD and I think
Of
about
course.
thoughts, but you are known in the internet marketing world as the guy, and I know you won't take credit for it and say I'm the
Right.
first, you know, as the guy that created like the first opt-in
Right.
page, you know, squeeze page,
Right.
where people give you an email. And you also, your very good friend, one of your best friends, Eben Pagan, took what it is you taught him and applied it to the dating world. And he's now the largest seller of how-to dating advice for men and women,
Right.
you know, running currently a $20 million a year business,
Right.
selling information that isn't even about how to make money,
Right.
which is most fascinating about it. Plus, Eben's just a very, very bright, very well-studied guy, but literally a simple opt-in page. So one of your areas of expertise is converting leads
Right.
on the internet. So all the stuff we've been talking about applies online. If you could maybe, I'm going to really ask you to talk about it in layman's terms. I know we have people out there that, you know, are brilliant marketers that understand this stuff inside and out. There's also people that this may be their first kind of experience
Right.
with direct response. So how does this stuff apply to the internet world, the online world, versus just the offline world?
You know, in layman's terms, I think we talked about the forest and the trees. I think what we're looking at is that all the direct response principles that you're doing,
Right.
that we're talking about, are leading people to where they make a first step. Now, the reason that I started experimenting with making leave your name and email address as the only option is because it just made sense to me that if you focus on having people, giving them one choice, either leave your name and email address or don't.
Right.
And it's okay if you don't, but more people will leave their name and their email address. So once they leave their name and their email address, to me, that's metaphorically like showing up in your living room. They're sitting there in your living room.
Right.
And rather than just saying, if you want anything or any way I can help you, feel free to call me or ask me any question, is anticipating what their need is and making an offer that's going to lead them to the next step. And that it's really just about imagining and using email just like a conversation. You know, I look at email follow-up like that as being just a really slow conversation. You say something, then I say something, then you say something. And you know, writing emails that are short, personal, and expecting a reply.
Okay, well, we've talked about some really good, valuable stuff. So for everyone that's out there, one or two things that you would recommend they do as a result of listening to what it is we talked about that could be actionable items, what would you recommend that they do to most get benefit from what we've shared and talked about?
Well, we talked about the complete spectrum. We talked about lifestyle, and we talked about specific business strategies. And for me, I think the very first thing would be to look at the lifestyle first and say, you know, examine your own desires, your own preferences for your life. What would be the perfect life for you? And really examine, how will you know that you're being successful? And if people can get that together first, that sets kind of a compass, like you said, that kind of guides you in the right direction. Then how can we abide within these guidelines that we've set up for ourselves? Now, how can we have the very best business that we can and still play by those rules? You know, shape our business to support our lifestyle. That would be the two things that I would say people should take away from this?
Awesome. You know, I want to kind of, although it's talking about someone else, my friend Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4-Hour Workweek.
My friend too.
Yeah, you know Tim, and he's a very bright guy, and he's very calculated. Doesn't like marketers all that much because, you know, he's kind of a funny guy. And I have a lot of conversations with him. And one thing that I think a lot of people don't get about the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, was one of the reasons that it has done so well is he did a fabulous job with positioning and marketing and going out and establishing relationships with people and giving them value in order to build this. But you can't really live that sort of life, if you want to or not, without marketing. You know, one thing that people don't understand is if
That's
you
what
don't,
allowed him to do it. Exactly.
you know, it's like you can't do the 4-Hour Workweek, in my opinion, without being a pretty good marketer. And so it's not only that this is really effective stuff, but it is the one vehicle that can free up enormous amounts of time and give you enormous leverage to develop lifestyle design. So having said that, first off, thank you for sharing your thoughts, sharing your wisdom. I think it is real wisdom. You know, a lot of people have ideas, but I think you just have some really profound wisdom, and it's easy to understand and it's very applicable, and you've helped tens of thousands of people. So how can people get more information about Dean Jackson, read what it is you've wrote, and kind of get tapped into your network?
I do a weekly podcast called Marketing Monday, and that's at marketingmonday.com. So anybody can go there and check out our archives. I've been doing them for about 3 years now. And there's all kinds of, a lot of the things that we've talked about right there I've covered on a lot of different Marketing Mondays. So that'd be a good place to start.
Excellent. And I've also done some other interviews with you, and people can get those at geniusnetwork.com. And just for a shameless plug, if you want to actually put together your own consumer awareness guide or a free recorded message, a system for that, I've actually developed that in the Nightingale Conant program, which you can get at joepolish.com or directly from Nightingale Conant. Any famous last words?
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for participating, and go out there and develop your own I Know I'm Being Successful win. Do it right now because it's cool. Thank you, Dean.
Thanks.